Good afternoon. I'm Linda Illumanardi, and I am a natural dyer and botanical printer here in the foothills of Altadena. I've been asked to do kind of an instructional video for you, so I thought that learning some of the raw materials that we have here locally that will actually adhere to a fabric and be fairly stable, without the entire scouring and mordanting process would be a good place to begin. Now, when you do scour and mordant, particularly the cellulose fibers like cotton and linen and bamboo, hemp, I set up a big kettle and I put 4 teaspoons of soda ash into the kettle per pound of fabric and a little squirt of some pH balance 7.0 detergent. The Ecos at Aldi's works very well, and I mention that later in the series. I boil out all the factory chemicals, I simmer it for 2 or 3 hours, and I rinse it well, and then I do a light mordant on it, usually with an aluminum base. But since I don't want us to have to get into all of that and have something that is going to work quite well for you, I thought that we could start with a very dark, high contrast natural dye and also a lighter, more subtle dye that is quite stable. So the lighter, more subtle dye is the eucalyptus. And in the continent of Australia, there's about 700 species of eucalyptus. And I believe it was in the mid-1800s that we brought a whole bunch of them here to California. I've read for a number of reasons. I mean, one of them, I guess, was as a wind barrier, which is rather silly because they're shallow rooted, and when it's very wet and windy, they tend to topple over and are a liability hazard. Nonetheless, they're a beautiful, beautiful tree, and I love them with my whole heart. So when you go out and gather your eucalyptus leaves, you have to know that some of them, and I can show you these samples, some of them, some of the round Esonaria will print either, a golden yellow, or some will even give this lovely orange color. When I add a little bit of iron, then it'll push, more of the greens and the browns and more of the golds. And when we're really lucky, then we find some of the E-sideroxylon, which is quite common here and known as iron bark. And these are prints of these. See, here is the Esonaria. That's more of the, the round form. And not all of these will give you that color. You have to be a little picky and be willing to try a whole bunch. I did a study over 3 years and printed the same trees in my area for since 2017 was when I really got serious about it. And then this is that E-sideroxylon, which is also known as the red iron bark. Now, that's what I'm going to use in my dye bath. You can differentiate that from the others because it has more of a pine tree looking bark. It's not that shaggy bark that spills all over your lawn, and it's not that one that looks like that smooth white beauty. It actually looks more very similar to a conifer. And if you look very closely, you can see little specks of resin in the bark. And that's where it got its name in Australia, was because when they would go to chop it down, they thought it was iron, and the little resin in there will make it very difficult to chop down. And these are the leaves from the red iron bark, the E-sideroxylon. And it's easy to get these because most gardeners trim these up on a regular basis. They don't want the branches to get too heavy and topple off, and they don't want any of those suckers around the base to grow up and begin new trees. And so, try a variety. Now, you can be as silly as me. I'm very dedicated to this. And you can do each part of the tree separately. So you could actually make a bath and test the color of the leaves. You can test the branches. You can test the little seeds that also become gum nuts and fall on the ground, and see what each one gives you. I love doing that. It's a big passion of mine. So you have that information. What I also do, I often will take a handful of yellow and red onion skins and throw them in with, sometimes with my eucalyptus. And in fact, the batch I'm going to do with you, I'm going to do that. And you know, you can gather those in the market, you can start saving them at home, you can ask your neighbors and family to save them for you. So that's another very simple one. So one bath will be your eucalyptus or your eucalyptus and onion skin. The second one, I want you to have a dark contrast. And you can see here, that's pretty dark. Now, anytime you combine tannin with iron, you're going to get black or gray, either one. So the local materials that I use most often to do this, and that's how this one was done, is I just look for rusty objects. And so here is a rusty old horseshoe. I'm going to put that back in the dye bath. There's all kinds of, you know, rusty nails, rusty cans, what have you. And so I throw a couple of those in my bath. And I look under walnut trees, and then I hit these with a hammer, sometimes a hammer and a chisel, and I break up one of those. And if I'm very fortunate, then the oak trees will give me an oak gull. Now look carefully for that hole to show that the hornet has escaped. They have kind of a symbiotic relationship, and so I try to honor that nature. The other thing that's very high in tannin that I threw into this black dye bath is when I eat my pomegranates off the tree that grows in the backyard, I save the rinds. The rinds are very high tannin, and as soon as they mix and simmer for a couple of days with your rusty objects, you will get a black, and I mean black. So that's it. If you can't find, if you don't have a pomegranate, if you don't have any walnuts, you can't find the beautiful oak gall, use leaves that are high in tannin. When I first moved here 21 years ago from the state of Vermont, of course, all of the flora here was very different than in the Northeast. And so I have been out studying and looking at all the leaves and testing them for tannin. And I like to use the invasive ones first, you know, the ones that don't really belong here as natives. And so two of those that I think of right offhand, the laurel sumac, the mountains are covered with laurel sumac. Don't feel bad using them. You know, you can break off a couple of branches. It will not damage the tree. The other one would be tree of heaven. Everyone calls it the tree of hell because it's terribly, terribly invasive, has poisonous roots, and also knocks out some of our native species. If you rake your lawn and you have a liquid amber often has some tannin in it. Eucalyptus has tannin. You could throw a handful of the eucalyptus. So once you have gathered, you know, your two batches, right? You're going to have the eucalyptus, possibly with the onion in it, and then you're going to have the black. You use old kettles that are never going to be used for food again, right? And I have induction plates now, and I have a propane burner, but I did start out with just a very inexpensive hot plate when I began. And so I set it up outside. We have this glorious weather pretty much year round, and I bring it up to a boil, and then I bring it down to a simmer, and I let it simmer a couple of hours. I shut it off, and then when it cools, I lay it in the sun throughout the next day. So I do that for 24 to 48 hours before I put my Shibori bundles in, and that's what I'm going to be teaching you. I'm going to be teaching you a couple of very fun, unique folds. So, I hope I'm not umming you to death here. So that being said, both of these dyes, the eucalyptus and the black dye, can tolerate a boiling temperature and bring it down to a simmer without killing the color. Now there are some herbs, plants, you know, raw materials that once it reaches 200 degrees Fahrenheit, you'll lose all the color. So I'm giving you two that are very easy, very successful. I think you'll be happy with it. So, this is an important one. If your neighbor or if you're out walking has a pomegranate tree, it seems that we had that late rain shower in March for a week, and the pomegranate began producing so many little babies that to save itself, it spit out the babies on the ground. Now, normally I would never touch the babies because I love eating them so much. But here are what the babies look like. So here's more of a fresh one I found on the ground this morning, and here is a dried one. And either one is fine. I mean, anytime something is dried, I'm probably going to whack it with a hammer a few times to break it up and have it disperse. And the same as, my leaves, if they're fresh, I'm going to cut them up. And if they're dry, I'm just going to rake them off the branch, crumble them up, and fill up my pot. Now, this is a good thing to talk about. In the dyer's world, in the older texts, they talk about weight of fabric, right? Weight of fabric. So let's just say, and I'm going to give you a sneak preview, let's just say that this is my white top, okay? And I've scoured it and I've mordanted it, although with indigo I wouldn't need to mordant it either. And I weighed it, and let's say it's 20 grams. And I weigh it on my little scale and it's 20 grams. Then the older texts say when you're gathering raw materials, you want 200% weight of fabric. So you would, put in 20 times 200% and you have 40 grams. Now, what I have found, especially with invasive things, go heavy. Why risk it? So many people are just accustomed to those procyon and acid dyes, that we tie-dye with. It's which is very different than natural dyes, right? So it's nothing for me to fill my kettle half full of leaves and then bring it up with water, and as they cook down, I'll bring up my water level. And you'll see, I mean, if you're using that red iron bark, you'll see after a couple of days, this will begin to get really thick and kind of orangey, red, yellow. But also don't be surprised if you get green, or if you get a lovely brown, or, a golden. It's going to depend on what leaves you explore. Whoop. So I think we have covered the basics. I wish I had one of those fancy things that would have the writing, to tell you all the materials. But I think you've got it. And then we can move on to the next thing. So at this point, you're going to gather your raw materials. You're going to get a couple of old kettles, and you're going to begin that. Bring it up to a boil, bring it down to a simmer, leave it for a couple of hours, let it sit a couple of days, and then go on to the next portion. Okay? Enjoy. I'll talk to you soon. Okay, so now you've either decided you're just putting all the eucalyptus or onion skins or eucalyptus gum nut caps, whatever, into your kettle, and they've been simmering. Mine has been simmering maybe a total of 2 to 3 hours. I mean, I did bring it to a boil first, and then I just lifted it up and put it in the sun. So I'm going to show you. Oh, and I did find a half a bag, just a regular produce plastic bag from the grocery store, of onion skins. They were mixed, both the yellow onion skins and the red onion skins. So I tossed them in with the eucalyptus leaves. So I'm going to just show you where I'm at with this. Do you see that? Don't come to my house for wine. You know that, right? I do like picking these up at thrift stores or through the local Buy Nothing program on Facebook, and they're really great when I'm doing pH tests. And so, as a rule, eucalyptus tests high acid. So let's just test this. I do have some, pH dipsticks. They're from the Micro Essential Lab. And I put it in here, and I pull it out, and it's a 4.0. Can you see that? So with 7 being neutral, anything above 7 is going to be high alkaline, and anything below 7 is lending into your acid. As a rule, eucalyptus is higher acid, so it's exactly where it should be. We have a nice little orangey brew going here, and I'm just going to let that set overnight one more time. And I might just hit it with the heat one more time and then let it sit. So what I want to do at this time is I just want to get you ready and show you a few techniques. If we look at, let's see, this indigo piece, you can see these little polka dots here, okay? And then there's bigger ones down there. So, and then there's these lines. So these lines are simply just created by taking, you know, a standard string and tying them where those white marks are, nice and tight. Letting it wad up and just tightening it up. And then these, can you guess what those are? Those are a variety size of marbles, right? So I have all of these little goodies here. And, you know, we have marbles. And then I have, you know, a collection of those polished stones. And I have, you know, the glass globs that a lot of florists put, you know, in the bottom. So any of those things will work and will give you a little different shape. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you. And let's see. So here are some with the large marbles in here. And I did tie them with the string. So I like the string, and I feel like it's more durable. I sometimes like the, you know, the lines that the string makes, and it's just not as fast. So because of the, you know, the expedience issue here, I am going to use elastic bands. Now, a lot of people use elastic bands, and I like them because they're fast and easy and kids' fingers can do them quickly. However, sometimes the heat will break them. And that's always a little disappointing for me. But, you know, I don't want to sit here for 10 minutes and, you know, have it and tie it. So I'm just finding a location, and then I'm going to wrap it until it's very secure. And that's it. So I'll just keep adding to this, and when I'm done, it's going to look like this big, you know, balled up mess of tied objects in it. And it'll have, like, you know, this polka dot effect with these little kind of flowery-like images, which are very nice. So remember, lines, just gather and tie, roundish objects, tie nice and tight and snug. And now I thought I would just treat you, because this, you know, I didn't know this when I was a young lass doing tie-dye, right? You know, more of this star spider web kind of deal here. So let's go there now. I'm going to get organized a little bit. I'm going to switch us around. Okay, so now we've talked about moving on to this little, we don't know, star, spider web, snowflake design. And I'm going to use this little spray bottle. And this just has water and a little vinegar in it. And I use it a lot. It just kind of gives it a little weight, helps, you know, smooth things out a little bit. And you can do it with any size. Someday, perhaps, we should try it with a t-shirt. And that would be a little different, too. So I'm going to guesstimate the center. And I'm going to bring this up. Okay. And then I'm going to bring this side in. Right? I'm going to bring this side in. And now I'm at this point. And I'm going to fold it over. Now I have to tell you a little secret. Last June, I went and did dyeing and printing in Mississippi with my friend Winky. And she is the one who taught me this lovely fold. So I do want to give her credit. So let's start up here. We're going to start right at the very end. And we want these sticks to be right across from each other. That's what's going to create, remember, the white line, right? So the tighter it is, the cleaner the line. Now again, we've talked about this with the marbles. You know, you can go in and, you know, you can use an elastic. However, if the heat gets too much in your dye bath, then this could break, right? So yes, it's easier. Yes, it's faster. Yes, it's nicer for children. But sometimes it really seems worthy to go the extra mile with the string. And I just double it, tighten it, and then I double knot it. You can tell my hands have been swimming in a dye bath today, but there's nothing toxic in there, remember? It was just the eucalyptus, and I put a little extra onion skin in it. And I'm going to tie it. So then, maybe I'll go on to, see that's pretty firm. Let's go on to the wider ones, and we'll see what happens if we go the opposite way. Okay? I'm going to stick with the string. You know I am. So I'm going to just move it up so I have a tying end. I'm going to wrap it a couple times. Slide it. I kind of put a pinky there, right? And then I'm double knotting it. Putting a pinky there again. And that's what would be hard for children. Again, you know, sometimes the fat little rubber bands that come on our broccoli are a little more stable than the elastics that we get in the store, in the stationery store. So I'm going to come around and I'm going to wrap it. I'm going to snug it up. And then I'm going to tie it. Now, there is a possibility, and I know that I have done this before, and I'll show you in just a second, that, you know, some people will use a clamp. So, you know, there's a variety of clamps, and these come in all different sizes. They're very strong. And you could literally do that. So if you had children, you know, you could get the smaller version of this. I don't think I have any left in my bags today. No, this is still a large one. But these also, you know, will hold your clamps and your sticks in place and still create that nice white stripe for you. And then you can just keep going, right? And you can just keep playing with your sticks and make your design, and there you have it. Now, this is what I want you to do. When you have your sticks, which are, you know, I'm giving you 3 options now. I would put it in your dye bath. I would heat it up well again, and I would give it a couple of stirs, heat it up for maybe an hour, shut it down, and then leave it for another good 24 hours. Remember, we're using natural dyes. And yes, I do realize that a lot of people, gosh, they'll use anything from blueberries to blackberries to cabbage to red beets. All of those are food stains. All of those are going to wash out very, very quickly and give natural dyeing a bad name. So make good choices. Listen to what I'm sharing with you as a, as a professional dyer, and let's stick, right now with onion skins, eucalyptus, and even pomegranate peels. Those 3 I feel pretty good about right now without going through the scouring and mordant process. So there's your next step. Let's do it. Okie dokie. So we are back. Now, remember, I had a vat of the eucalyptus and the onion skin. And then I had the very dark vat with the rusty objects, as you can see. The walnut, the pomegranate, the oak gall, and a handful of eucalyptus leaves. So, of course, the one that had the iron in it is going to go black. That was the intent, remember? And we, the other ones are going to be more subtle. So when I opened, and this was only an overnight, remember? When I opened my little marbles, now there was a piece of metal in there. And as soon as it touches this, then the tannin from the leaves and the iron from the rusty object is going to create black, which is kind of a bummer sometimes, right? And it's more subtle. Now let me show you when I did the second fold, you know, in the black, you get something a little bit more dramatic here. So there's, you know, a lot of variations. And then my friend who was playing with us here, she folded and did clips. And here's the eucalyptus onion together. And one of them, this is folded and then pressed between two squares, which I think we need a little skirt or something, maybe an apron made out of this, I'm thinking. And then, let's see what else is here in the eucalyptus world. There you go, there's your little spider's web. And this is just folded and with some of those metal clips that I showed you at the very end. So lots of patterns, lots of patterns. And let's just undo. Now I want to show you, remember I made kind of a big deal about the using the string just because it's more stable. And, you know, I still like the string. But what I do is I look for little tiny embroidery scissors that have pointies on them, right? So that it's much easier to cut those little knots off and get in there so you can see me. I'm getting dirtier again. I'm just a dirty girl here, I know. So we're going to cut these off. And, you know, I kind of like the high contrast. I think that the lighter is beautiful, and I like that. So here, I've been cutting this off. Look, see that iron got in there again. There was a piece of iron in there, and that's what's happening. But that's okay. At least you can see. It's always a surprise. We're experimenting. If you're going to do an indigo vat, and indigo vats are so fussy, you know, you probably do want. And there's that piece that I did with you yesterday before these set overnight. So you have subtles. I'm going to have these dry for a few days and just cure and see. And then I'm probably going to rinse them with like a 7.0 pH balanced soap. Now what I've found is if you go into Aldi's right here in Altadena on Lake, then you can buy the Ecos dish detergent, and the lavender Ecos dish detergent will, with your little pH dipstick, it will, it's usually a perfect 7.0, which is nice. If it's too alkaline, it's going to have an effect. If it's too acid, it's going to have an effect. It could change color, it could wreak havoc. And remember, once again, is that we did not scour and mordant these. These were just washed really well in hot water, and nothing was pre-treated. And so it allows you, you know, kind of an introduction into the process of natural dyeing with dyes that, you know, will give you something that's something reliable and available here in our environment. I wish you were here so we could all talk about this. One thing I do want to mention, because this is my first video for Altadena Library Series, is that normally I do video on my iPhone. And when I look directly at the camera, I'm looking directly at you. With this, it appears that the lens is over here. And so when I'm looking directly at the camera, it looks like I'm staring off to my right or to the left of your screen. So I apologize for that. And I just think we can keep improving. I think all the content and information is here, and I don't want to worry about the quality of that. Do know that my Instagram account is linda.illumanardi, Linda.Illumanardi, as in David I. And it's a public account, and you can see tons of my work there. And you could also, if you start exploring and experimenting in this medium, you can always direct message me there, and I would be happy to see you on your journey. So have fun, be safe, cook outside, use old kettles, and just play, and have a good time. That's what matters right now. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.